When I think about a band like Sir Lord Baltimore, it's kind of like an if you know, you know type of thing. Just such an incredibly heavy and just jagged and like angular and aggressive band. So ahead of its time, so heavy for coming out in 1970. Probably one of my favorite bands of all time, and a band with kind of a lot of mystique and mystery around them. And, not a lot of information, I guess, from the members of the band specifically that exists out there. But, a couple months ago, I was lucky enough to stumble upon these 1991 interviews with John and Lewis from the band, conducted by Brian Fox. And we had Brian Fox in the show, had a great chat with him. He ended up becoming friends with John and Lewis over the years. So he shared some really great insight into some different, stories, stuff about the band's lost live tapes, potential rehearsal tapes existing out there, and just some general awesome information about Sir Lord Baltimore. If you're a fan of this band, you're not going to want to miss this one.
I randomly on YouTube saw that interview you did with John and Lewis,
Yeah,
and it was like the first time I've been able to find any information about this band I love, Sir Lord
yeah.
Baltimore.
Oh, yeah. I totally love.
Like they're just great, and like I've tried to get information just about, I don't know, stuff like the like third album that was like not released or whatever, and then later came out and stuff like that, and I just like can't find everything anything because obviously John and Lewis are gone.
Yeah,
So I saw that and just thought it'd be cool to talk to you if you don't mind. I just really love this
yeah. I
band.
I might
Yeah,
be the number one fan. I
heck
think
yeah.
John Garner thought I was their number one fan. I
Hmm.
tracked them down in '91.
Yeah.
Got a hold of their aunt in New Hempstead, New York.
Uh-huh.
They gave me John's number, and then I got Lewis's number and called both of them.
Hmm.
And I told them, I don't know if you guys know, you're legends now. And they were
Yeah.
like, "Wow, what the heck?"
Yeah.
And so ended up becoming friends with both of them, having a couple of conversations, and I did those interviews then,
Yeah.
and finally got around to posting them on YouTube last year. So, and I have a Facebook page called Sir Lord Baltimore, the history's greatest heavy metal band, or something like that, and
Cool.
all kinds of goodies on there. So yeah, they're just been one of my all-time favorite bands, and it
Yeah.
started really early.
But yeah, man. So how did you find out about them to begin with?
Well, the funny thing is, I was living here in Seattle then, and the Beatles' White Album. I heard music on transistor radio and stuff before, and I liked a lot of stuff like the Yardbirds and things.
Yeah.
And I had favorites, but for some reason, Hey Jude came out, and then the White Album in Christmas of '68, and it just changed my life forever. After that, everything was music.
Yeah.
But right away, I was kind of into the heavier stuff because my other favorite band was Steppenwolf.
Nice.
And so by 1970, when the first Sir Lord Baltimore came out, I was already into Alice Cooper and Black Sabbath and Grand Funk and Mountain and
Hmm.
Led Zeppelin and all that stuff. And I was sitting in my room one day, and they played this heavy stuff, and I was like, "Whoa, these guys are more insane than anything I'm already listening to." And it turned out to be Sir Lord Baltimore. And
Yeah.
so I started checking record stores. I was 13, and nobody knew anything about it. Apparently, there was already issues with trying to special order them. And then one day I was looking at an ad in the back of a music magazine, and it was for a guy that sold cutout records down in San Luis Obispo, California.
Wow.
So I sent away a catalog, and of course back then it would just be, like handwritten, Xeroxed, and then stapled. And I'm going through the list, and there's both through the Baltimore albums.
Wow.
So, they were probably like a buck and a half a piece. I sent away and got them, and
Wait.
was just floored. Even with all the big heavy bands that I really loved, they just were so intense and so crazy
Yeah.
that it was just completely obsessed from that day forward. And then moving through the years, it's basically anybody that I knew that was into heavy music, I'd be like, "Oh man, you got to hear this band, Sir Lord Baltimore." And I've been doing that for 50 years. And I was amazed, like nobody'd ever heard of them because, they came and went pretty quick.
Right.
And so I've been kind of their big champion.
Yeah.
And, and in fact, I can take some responsibility for John kind of raising their profile again because after I talked to him a bunch of times on the phone,
Right.
he was like, "Oh, I'm going to set up this website and we're going to try and rework these old tapes and put out
Yeah.
another CD and all the other stuff." And I
Yeah.
said, "Oh God, that'd be great." They're so so that's kind of how I discovered them.
Hmm.
And since then, there's not that much to collect. They just have the two albums and there's two singles.
Right.
One of them's rarer than the other one. I think they're pretty much all promos. I don't think any stock copies were ever
Hmm.
pressed. And then I actually last year, after 50 some odd years, I actually managed to turn up a press kit, promo
Wow.
press for their first album, and I posted that on my Facebook page. So
Wow.
that's kind of, and I've been a record collector and vinyl junkie since '68. So
Sweet.
and
Heck
and
yeah.
I also have a um, YouTube channel called I Hate Rock Music that I basically review rare records.
Sweet. I'll check that out. That's
Yeah,
my bread and butter.
yeah, me too, too.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about like when I was listening to the interviews, John and Lewis, they were kind of both talking about like these like unreleased tracks and stuff. And like my understanding is like, later on they were kind of reworked, at least a certain amount of them. And that's the Sir Lord Baltimore 3 Raw record that you can
Yeah,
like get online or whatever.
yeah.
I'm curious as to first off, did they end up sending you any of that music and kind of what happened to that? And
Oh yeah.
what's your understanding about all that stuff?
Well, actually, I know all about it because I talked
Yeah.
to him considerably. Basically, what happened is the management team, Jim Credicos and Mike Appel,
Mhm.
still kind of had legal control of the material, so he wouldn't really be in a position legally to use the actual tapes from the third album.
Right.
So he basically salvaged some of the things from the tapes and then did a lot of re-recording on top of it. Um,
This is John.
yeah, this is
Okay.
John.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they brought in this other guitar player. I can't remember what his name is, but from the same time period, they actually reworked an old Sir Lord Baltimore song called Woman Tamer.
Yeah. Right.
And that was not released on the CD. And I was, when I was talking to John, I was like, man, you should have done more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of debate as to who was involved.
Right.
Joey Dambra was kind of out of the scene. I'm not sure what happened to him, but Gary
Mhm.
Justin, the bass player, ended up working on Wall Street and doesn't
Right.
really have anything to do with the music anymore. And so he wasn't really interested in the new project.
Hmm.
And then he got this guitar player involved in it, and that's how they ended up doing Sir Lord Baltimore 3. I think it's kind of misguided in some respects, and I talked to John about that. It's like there's a lot of intense interest in the original band, and I
Right.
think they could have approximated the old sound a little more with the new record. It would have
Yeah.
done a lot better.
Yeah.
And that's why when I heard the reworking of Woman Tamer, I was like, wow, they still could do it if they wanted.
Right.
But those are, for the most part, those are songs that they were working on back in '74.
Hmm.
So, they reworked him for that new record. And religion was really important to him. So
Right.
which was also the case back in the early days. It doesn't show so much, but when you dig into some of the lyrics, um, John was already very religious, so that's something
Right.
that went through his whole life.
Right. And like
So
Lewis being a pastor and stuff, right?
yeah, I was
Yeah.
surprised when
Yeah.
I tracked him down. He was a
Yeah.
pastor in LA working with the homeless and very
Yeah.
gentle. And you could
Yeah.
tell from the interviews, very
For
gentle, very
sure.
soft spoken, and he was very amused, by the whole thing and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Oh, it's too bad he wasn't live because finding pictures of Sir Lord Baltimore has been virtually impossible. And this last year, some guy that attended a Black Sabbath show took one picture of Sir Lord Baltimore. It happened to be a killer shot of Louis Dambra. That's posted on my Facebook page now. But just, after 50 years to finally see a really amazing picture. I bugged the photographer too. I said, "Oh my God, you didn't take any other
Yeah.
pictures of
It's
the
just
band?" He said,
one. Wow.
"Oh, whatever."
Yeah.
So I can
Um,
give you a really quick history of the band.
yeah, no, totally. I had one more question about that record there. So, um, those those tracks that were kind of re-recorded and turned into that album, did you ever get your hands on like the original
No,
recordings?
he would not let those loose
Ah, wow.
to
Okay.
save my life. I know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I also talked to him at length about any live tapes, and he didn't have any
yeah.
live tapes, but he did have a cache of rehearsal tapes. And
Okay.
he teased me a lot. He said, "Man, you can hear from the records, like, we jammed a lot. You should hear us."
Yeah,
And so there's rehearsal tapes and jamming tapes. And once again, he was so persnickety about quality. He just, even for me, he
yeah,
wouldn't let anything. I told him, "Hey, just just to fulfill my fantasy, just
yeah,
send me like 2 minutes of
yeah.
each song, so
Right,
I can
right.
hear, because that way, you don't have to worry about me doing anything with them." He said,
Yeah.
"I just don't
Wow.
want anybody to hear them because they're so rough."
Yeah.
And that his niece has all those tapes, and
Mm,
I've coached her a little bit. I said, there's a couple labels, um, like the people that put out the Brown Acid series,
yeah,
Riding Easy. There's a couple labels. If they're usable tapes at all, there's a lot of people that'd be interested, and
yeah,
you'd be compensated. So
yeah, yeah.
my worst fear is she's just going to let them sit in a box, and then somebody else is going to get them, and nobody's going to care. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, God, I could hear a live rehearsal tape of Sir Lord Baltimore. Holy shit.
No, yeah. That would be amazing.
So, so yeah. But that said, I'm not sure what to expect.
Hmm.
Uh, Even if I had heard the originals,
Yeah.
because they had gone through quite a transition by that point. And
Right,
so,
right. Because this was kind of like later on. Was that like I know they went to LA, right?
yeah, they went up to California. They started working with Kim Fowley, and that was 74.
Hmm.
And so they were kind of updating their sound a little bit. So
Right.
I'm not really sure what they were sounding like at that point. And then they all also, John was still having some issues with drugs.
Hmm.
And so they actually axed him. And one of the singers that they auditioned was Michael DeBars from
Right.
Silverhead and Detective.
Hmm.
Which makes sense because Kim Fowley would have been in touch with Michael DeBars, and Michael DeBars is always up for some new thing. But
Right.
that's a lot of the stuff that, when I talked to John a lot, I found out. I also found out he went out and auditioned to be in Mark Farner's band,
Hmm.
and around that same time, and he joked about the fact that he walked in a room and he was wearing like an Edwardian
Yeah.
suit, and Mark Farner's wearing jeans and a shirt, and he was
Right.
like, he already knew something was maybe not going to work.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what they would have sounded like in 1974.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, knowing you probably know as well, if you focus in on 60s and 70s rock, or even after that, things change dramatically every year.
Right.
It's gotten to the point now where you can really tell the difference between 67 and 68, 69.
Yeah.
So, the first two Sir Lord Baltimore's came out in 1970, early
Hmm.
1970, late 1970 slash 71.
Yeah.
That heavy rock was like the thing.
Yeah.
By 74, things were
Yeah.
changing.
Right.
A
Right.
lot of those heavy bands were kind of getting more pop elements into them.
Hmm.
So, not
Yeah.
having heard that unreleased third album material, I suspect that they probably changed the sound quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. It would be, I mean, it would be awesome to hear some of that. So maybe
Yeah. Oh
maybe we
God.
can hopefully at some point. That would be sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, I keep working on his niece, and I'll probably,
Yeah.
probably give her another poke here
Yeah.
pretty soon. 'Cause I
Yeah.
think
Well,
this.
let me know if anything happens.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Love to hear it. Well, yeah. So generally, how did you? I guess so you play music. What's your story with that?
Yeah, I was like so many guys, I was a record collector, and then punk rock came along, and it was like, everybody could do it.
Hmm.
And so originally I worked with some local bands. I started a local record label called Safety First, and I, excuse me, put out the Moberly's and the Fastbacks first
Oh,
record.
sweet.
And then in 1980, 81, I was manager for a group called The Living, which included teenage Duff McKagan.
Wow.
And so, and the drummer, Greg Gilmore, that went on to Mother Love Bone.
Wow.
And after 50 years, I finally got my due because 2 years ago, Loose Groove, Pearl Jam's label, finally released the unreleased living demos, which are killer
Yeah.
by any punk rock standards. They're epic, worldwide, just killer. It's hard to believe Duff was only 17 then. So I managed them for about a year. And then when they broke up, I was like, hey, I can do this. So I grabbed Greg Gilmore, the drummer, and started my first band,
Hmm.
Chubby Children. So I did Chubby Children off and on from 82, 83, 85. Then we had a new lineup in 92 and went out and did a bunch of live shows. And then I had a bunch of bands after that too. But, being a little bit older than most of the guys in the scene, I was still interested in a lot of older.
Right.
So when Chubby Children around, we pretty much planned to do a cover of Sir Lord Baltimore's Pumped Up.
Hmm.
We did a cover of Vandergraaf Generator, Ship of Fools. I was kind of more influenced by the older stuff
Right.
and the Soft Boys and
Nice.
Mission of Burma and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't so much into the grunge. I mean, I liked a lot of the grunge bands,
Right.
and a lot of those guys were my friends.
Yeah.
Um, I was definitely more influenced by other things. So that's my background in music.
Cool. What was kind of you said the band was Chubby Children.
Yeah.
What was kind of the sound for that? You said like 82. Was that kind of like punk rock stuff originally, or what was?
No, we were actually kind of arty,
Hmm.
almost like I guess what I call sort of like prog grunge
Okay.
because we kind of fit in with the other bands, but just there's just a lot different kind of elements going into it.
Yeah.
I didn't have that kind of yarling kind of voice
Right.
that
Right.
all
Right.
the grunge singers have. I have more of a tenor, more like Adrian Belew or something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it was, had some kind of punkish elements, but we had guitar solos, we had progressive elements, we had a couple of longer songs, but
Cool. Yeah.
uh, so yeah, so just definitely a little weird. I've got some stuff. We never really put anything out, but
Hmm.
I have material on YouTube.
Cool. Cool.
So
Yeah, I mean, that's a great period. I'm also kind of interested in like, I guess so you said you're from Seattle?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean just that kind of like 80s kind of early grunge stuff like Skin Yard, the U-Men, all that, whatever. You know what I
Oh yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Love
Those
that
are all my
stuff.
buddies.
Love that
Yeah.
stuff. I last year I had a grunt truck on my show, the
Oh,
surviving members of them. And that was
oh, what a trip.
awesome. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
That's
a
great.
blast. I love those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, Ben, their old singer was a friend of mine.
That's awesome.
A lot of those guys are passing now, but
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
Jack and Dean is one of my oldest friends, so
That's awesome.
he
That's
recorded
awesome.
the Chubby Children and whatnot, and
Oh, okay, did he? Okay, cool. Cool,
yeah, he
cool.
actually almost joined the band too, but you know,
Things
and I don't know
happen.
if you ever, what's that?
Oh, I just said stuff happened. He didn't join.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he came and jammed with us a couple times, and we were like, man, that'd be kind of cool to have Jack in the band too, because he and Greg Gilmore are really good friends too, and
Yeah.
we just decided, to kind of snoop around a little bit more. We almost got Paul Hinklin in from Sad Happy.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
I actually ended up forming a band with the bassist and drummer from Sad Happy too, a band called Harry Eyeball.
That's a
So
cool
there's
name.
yeah, there's all these kind of interconnections,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Yeah, the
know.
family tree stuff's always cool to see too, like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
all especially in Seattle, you know what I mean? Like there's
yeah,
always it's a
yeah,
related, you know what I mean? Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
real happy when Goldmine put out a Pearl Jam family tree and they actually
Yeah.
put my band in there because
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
so nice.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, I mean, I love learning about music like this, like bands like Sir Lord Baltimore, like something about them though, like it like scratches this itch, like because I think like you said in that interview, it reminds you of like the Stooges in a way, which I would agree with.
Oh yeah,
It's like this like frazzled, like there's nothing that I've ever heard that sounds like it at all, and it's just so cool, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The second album gets a little more like the other heavy bands, a
Yeah.
little slower. But man, that first one is just manic, just crazy. And John talked about the fact that sometimes, he'd get so coked up, he'd be back there singing and playing drums at the same time, and he'd practically black out. And
Yeah.
I can believe it.
No,
I
for sure.
almost I missed an opportunity to see them live because I was
Really.
living back in Virginia, and I wasn't old enough to or had friends that drove to just go to shows regularly. So I had to ask my dad. My dad would drive me and Chuck.
Uh-huh.
And so my dad had driven me and Chuck to see Alice Cooper in '72 with Ursa Major.
Mhm.
And Black Sabbath was playing like a couple weeks after that. And I couldn't quite get my dad to take us to another show so early. And I
Yeah.
found out later this is at William and Mary. And of course, found out later Sir Lord Baltimore opened that show and got
Wow.
like two standing ovations
Wow.
and,
Wow.
just crazy.
Wow.
There's an article on my Facebook page that's actually from a local paper, and it actually has a picture of Sir Lord Baltimore and talks about the fact that Sir Lord Baltimore got these two standing ovations,
Wow.
which is kind of surprising because Bill Graham in his book had talked about that he thought that Sir Lord Baltimore played at the Fillmore East and the Fillmore
Right.
West, and he thought they were one of the worst bands he'd ever seen, but he didn't really like that kind of music, so
Yeah.
I was kind of pissed that he singled them out.
Yeah.
Because as you would imagine, just like they must have been absolutely ferocious live.
I know. And
Yeah.
like I doubt this exists, but I've always wondered if there's like any footage of them. Probably not, but
Oh
wouldn't
no.
that would be so cool. Like I don't know. It's just
Yeah, I
yeah.
do imagine that some sound guy out there probably has a board tape of them because if they opened all those shows for Black Sabbath,
Right.
there's
Right.
a pretty good odds that some sound guy out there taped them
Yeah.
and has no idea what it is. It's just sitting in some box.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times these sound guys record all the bands and if, Black Sabbath there's a lot of recordings of them out there, of course
Yeah.
a lot of audience tapes, but
Right.
it and then the other thing is that I know there's at least one or two Sir Lord Baltimore live tapes in Bill Graham's collection because he recorded every show that was ever at Fillmore East and Fillmore West.
Mm.
And I don't know why, he's been dead for years. His wife controls the estate.
Yeah.
I just hard for me to imagine a lot of stuff hasn't been licensed out of that collection because all the great 60s, early 70s bands played there. And
Yeah.
so he obviously has board tapes
Right.
of every band under the sun.
Yeah. Man,
So,
that would be cool to hear.
yeah. Oh
Hopefully
my
we can
God.
get something, man. That'd be
Yeah,
awesome. I
I
know.
would kill for that. I know
Yeah.
that, it took many years. There's no live tapes of Dust either.
Right.
And finally, one tape showed up from the Brooklyn Community Center.
Uh-huh.
Not very good quality, but it took 40 years for that to surface.
Yeah.
So you never know.
You
Some
never
some
know.
guy may end up popping up with a tape at some point, but
Yeah.
a lot of it I think is just there's a lot of regular folks out there that just don't know anything about Sir Lord Baltimore. All us
Right.
collector vinyl junkie music heads
Yeah.
all know who they are, but regular folks would be just like, "What's this? Oh,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
Heard of it?"
Yeah. Right.
So
Crazy.
yeah.
So I was reading, I think it was just on Wikipedia, like around the time that like that third album was kind of released, there were plans for like live shows with whatever that lineup of the group was. My understanding is like nothing ever happened. They were supposed to play some festival, maybe in Sweden. That's what the Wikipedia said.
There was,
I don't know. There was talk of
yeah,
it.
there was talk, they got, there was offers for them to reunite and do some shows in Scandinavia because they're particularly popular there.
Really?
And John Garner had a band called the Lizards, and
Right.
they always went over to Scandinavia and played shows, and they always made sure they did Sir Lord Baltimore tunes.
Hmm.
But nothing ever really happened. And
Yeah.
talking to John, it doesn't sound like they really did any shows out there.
Yeah.
Uh, kind of imploded
Yeah.
relatively quickly.
Okay.
And I'm not even sure whether the third album stuff was recorded in New York before they left or if it was recorded out in California.
Right.
So that's why I'm not really sure. You know, if the stuff had been recorded in like 71 or 72, I'd have a lot more confidence that it was really killer.
Yeah.
But
Right. Right.
getting
Yeah.
into 74, you know, and they already had a bad taste in their mouth. I mean,
Right.
that's one thing I noticed uh, specifically with John. He still had a lot of bitterness about the way things got handled with them
Yeah.
and how he got handled, and I don't blame him.
Yeah.
You know, you were definitely tipped for the big time,
Hmm.
and things really unwound, and then he had trouble with uh, them for years.
Yeah.
And of course, Jim Kretikos and Mike Appel moved on and worked with Bruce
Right.
Springsteen a couple years after that, so they
Yeah.
didn't give a shit about
Yeah.
Sir Lord
Yeah.
Baltimore stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean you track down John and Lewis and then you talk, you do the interview thing, and then so kind of how was your relationship with them after that? Did you ever like hang out in person or was this kind of like phone calls here and there?
No,
How
you
was this
know,
kind of
yeah, I kind of always
yeah,
wanted to go
yeah,
visit New
yeah.
York, open invitation,
Hmm.
and we had a great relationship because, you know, how could he not be thrilled that I was
Oh yeah.
such a huge fan, and Lewis too. So they were
Hmm.
both really nice to me.
Yeah.
I talked to him probably talked to John about 20 times over the years after
Hmm.
that. And I probably talked to Lewis about 5 times after that. And
Hmm.
kind of after I did the interviews, we didn't really get into the sort of like Baltimore stuff as much. We were more just kind of
Yeah.
friends, you know, talking to
Right,
Lewis
right.
about how things were going on down there in LA,
Yeah.
and talking to John about, you know, there was one point where I asked him about, you know, bringing Sir Lord Baltimore out here to play a gig. And so, you know, we talked about that a little bit. He said it would take about 5 grand, which is a pretty small amount.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but the conversation about that kept dragging on because, you know, I wasn't sure who was going to be involved,
Right.
you know, and I
Right.
wasn't sure, you know, I kind of had to talk to John about gearing the repertoire to all the original stuff and not so much the third album.
Right. And was that before or after the third album was released? That kind of conversation was had with you guys?
Both before and
Okay.
after.
Okay. Cool.
So I was
Yeah.
gentle with him. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
definitely disappointed when the third one came out
Yeah.
because I had talked a lot about that beforehand. I said, you know, if you're going to work on a new album and you're going to use some of these old songs and stuff like that, you know, I just tried to be very gentle about
Yeah.
steering him in the right direction. And I think he kind of knew what I mean because when you hear that version of Woman Tamer, which I also have posted on YouTube, um, if it had all been like that, it would have been
Yeah.
frightening
Yeah.
because
Yeah. It was heavy.
John's voice still sounded great. His drumming was still killer. He got a pretty cool guitar player to do it,
Hmm.
and it really lived up to the legend,
Yeah. For
you
sure.
know,
For sure.
record. It was kind of funny that he called the third one Raw because it's actually pretty polished and
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty restrained.
Yeah. And then I was
So
interested, they used like the at least the cover of it that I've seen like online is just the same photo of them
oh
from
yeah, I
yeah.
know.
Yeah. That was
Yeah,
interesting, but I mean whatever.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And then I'm not too familiar actually with the band he was in, the Lizards. Was he in that band? I saw something on
yeah,
YouTube. So what do you know
yeah.
do you know about that? What's the deal with that?
They were just kind of you know, a band so he could continue playing rock music. It wasn't that similar to Sir Lord Baltimore or anything. It just kind of kept them playing. So they were definitely high quality musicians, but they were basically, kind of a bar band in a
Yeah.
way. So I wish I could recommend them more, but I really can't.
Yeah. Fair enough. I think I
Yeah.
saw the YouTube thing. I saw Vinny Appice was playing drums, or I forget how to pronounce his name. As Appice or Appice. He was like,
Oh yeah, Apogee, Carmen Apogee. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was like a one-time thing or if he was in the band with them for a while or what, but
I think it might have been a one-time thing or
okay,
something.
okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I can't totally vouch for that because, I know John sometimes would play and sing at the same time, and sometimes he'd just go up and front the band. So
Yeah.
it depends. They did a number of tours with different players, so
Right. Okay. Yeah.
there were possibilities. And
Right.
Lewis, he was playing, as he described, kind of new age guitar music. So there's some Lewis
Okay.
Dom tapes in his estate, but they would be pretty much Christian new age instrumentals.
Right. Right. Cool.
Although some people know this and some don't, there was a really cool, awesome, snotty garage punk band from '68
Mhm.
called Koala, and they had one album on Capitol, and that's actually Louis Dombrus. He was
Yeah, I
in
was gonna
that.
ask about that. Yeah. I need to
Yeah.
check that out. Where do you find their stuff? Can you just get online maybe
I'm
or
pretty
something?
sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that album has been reissued on CD. It's definitely
Okay.
posted on YouTube, but
Okay, cool.
it's pretty killer.
Cool. Cool.
Definitely not Sir Lord Baltimore, but you can kind of tell it's him.
Right. Right.
And there was rumors over the years that those guys were involved in that Bloody Mary
Right.
band slash album, but they're not.
Right. Right. Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Yeah,
Cool,
so
man.
there's no relation to
Yeah.
that.
Which I actually haven't checked out. Is it any good? I remember
It's
I
all
wasn't,
right.
yeah. Yeah, okay.
That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And what's your Facebook page name? The Sir Lord Baltimore one?
Sir Lord Baltimore, greatest heavy metal band in history, I think.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Awesome. And then you have YouTube channels and stuff?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
a YouTube channel called I Hate Rock Music,
Okay.
and I have another YouTube channel, but that's like economics and
Cool.
finance, geopolitics, and
Sweet.
stuff like that. And then I
Awesome.
have my personal Facebook page.
Sweet. 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 Cool, man. Well, I'm
Also,
glad I
also
tracked you
have
down.
a Facebook page for the living, Duff McKagan's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's another one I need to check out. I have definitely have heard of it, but I haven't checked it out. So that's on my list now too. The
yeah, it's
living.
killer. You'll love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Awesome.
They're
Yeah.
they really could have been something.
Yeah, I bet. That's awesome stuff. Hey man, well thanks for talking, man. I'm glad I tracked you down. This is great.
Okay.
I love learning about this band, man. Love learning about music,
You
talking
want
to
any more
people.
tidbits about the group?
Yeah,
I can
sure.
give you a couple.
My Zoom meeting is supposed to end in 6 minutes.
Okay, I can do
But
a quick.
yeah, and then if we can talk again or whatever another time,
Yeah,
maybe.
I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
going to throw out some tidbits.
Yeah, let's hear it.
They basically coalesced as a heavy band, and they saw an ad in the New York Times, I think. Mike Appel and Jim Kretikos were looking for a quality hard rock band, and so they answered the ad. And then they sent some tapes to those guys, and they said, "Oh man, you guys are awesome. Let's sign them up." They're the ones that actually named them Sir Lord Baltimore. So then they used to cut their teeth on covers with Black Sabbath and stuff like that, like everybody else, and then just hone their sound. And they got signed to Mercury in 1970, kind of a big deal. The legend is, and I think it's true, that their first gig was opening for Black Sabbath at Carnegie Hall. So their very first gig was Carnegie Hall. And then they started opening shows for Black Sabbath along that tour. And as John explains, Black Sabbath started letting Sir Lord Baltimore use their sound system. And now all of a sudden, Sir Lord Baltimore was as loud as Black Sabbath. And John, of course, says that they just started blowing Black Sabbath away, which I can believe.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
I love Black Sabbath, but Sir Lord Baltimore is a whole nother beast.
Yep.
And if they were as loud as Black Sabbath at those shows, I'm sure they would have just freaked out all the Black Sabbath audience. So supposedly they got dropped from the tour for that reason. And so I don't know of a lot of touring they did after the Sabbath tour. And then, of course, they got around to adding Louis Dambra, Louis's brother, Joey Dambra, on second guitar for the second album, recorded that album, and they just didn't get that much promotion from Mercury. So I think between the internal problems and struggles touring and not getting promotion, Mercury dropped them. And so that's another reason why that third album ended up in limbo. It doesn't sound like anybody was really lining up, and things changed quite a bit in '74. So that's basically the history of them.
Yeah.
There's not
Short-lived,
much.
short-lived,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
they were around for a year,
yeah,
and they probably were together for 6 months or a year before that when they were rehearsing up in New Hempstead.
yeah.
And so, Eddie Kramer, produced the record at Electric Ladyland. So Mercury actually must have put some money into him to afford Eddie Kramer and Electric
Right,
Ladyland Studios.
right.
So, but there it wasn't a whole lot of promotion, and
Yeah,
like I say, other than the Black Sabbath tour, I can't really see any evidence of them showing up,
right.
getting on other people's tours. It seemed like they would have been able to stay intact
Yeah,
if that had been true. But
yeah.
so anyway,
Because they did some stuff with, I don't know if it was one or two shows with Jay Giles Band, right?
yeah,
Right? Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I remember
yeah,
seeing like
they
a
did.
flyer or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, there's a show they did at I think the Fillmore East, where they ended up playing with the Jay Giles Band, which would have
Yeah.
been a weird matchup in a way.
Yeah.
Those were pretty common back then. I remember seeing Blue Oyster Cult open for Sly and the Family Stone in '73. You
Yeah.
know,
That's funny.
kind of a weird mix.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, man, it's
So,
like that. I guess the kind of history of this band is just so interesting because it's got this like mythical like element to it. At least from like my perception, it's just like, the two albums, I guess third if you're counting it, and then, like I can't find any information on them. You know what I mean? Like at
yeah,
all. Like nothing.
yeah,
And it's just
yeah,
it's kind of cool in a way, you know what I mean? Because it's like this mystique, which I feel like is pretty rare to find with like social media now and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's been great
yeah.
talking to you and just learning a little more,
Hey,
So yeah.
yeah, it's fairly common, because I've been doing these videos on one band at a time, and they're all really
Yeah.
obscure bands, and
Yeah.
and I'm sometimes I'm surprised at how much I can find out a band,
Yeah.
but a lot of times, a lot of those bands, it's really hard to find any information on them, even after all these years.
Yeah.
But at least, with the age of the internet, at least I can find out things. Like there's a really awesome proto-metal band on RCA in '71 called Highway Robbery.
Hmm.
I bought that album when it came out. I loved it. Didn't know anything about them all my life.
Yeah.
Now I can look up and at least find out information about them. I found out
Right.
that they never played any live gigs. I found out like what their pedigree was,
Yeah. Yeah.
what kind of equipment they use. So sometimes, or a band like Haystacks Balboa, they came out of New York around the same time as Sir Lord Baltimore. Really cool. Once again, really cool, heavy band. Put out one album on Polydor. They got their own website. They were smart enough
Right.
to put their whole website, so their early demos and their entire history is on there. So
Yeah.
John set up that website, but he didn't put a lot of information on there. But as
Yeah.
you and I have discussed, I mean, how much information could there be?
Right. Right. Yeah.
It was so short-lived, and
Yeah.
so yeah.
Crazy. Hey
Anyway,
man, I think this meeting's gonna end in like 30
okay,
seconds or
all
something,
right,
but
brother.
thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
That was Brian Fox, Sir Lord Baltimore, fanatic, musician, YouTuber. You can check out all his YouTube channel stuff in the links below. Please go on the Facebook group, Sir Lord Baltimore, the greatest heavy metal band in history. A lot of cool, great information and updates there. And if anyone listening has any information about Sir Lord Baltimore, any photos, live stuff, or just wants to get involved in the discussion of this band, go check that Facebook page out. Let's blow this up. Let's find those Black Sabbath soundboard tapes from the Fillmore. Let's go knock on everyone's door that had anything to do potentially with this band, and go rummage through some of their old boxes in their garage, because I think this can be done. I think we can find some information about this band, or just some live stuff or some other photos. Like, it's too good of a band to not have some more stuff, some more content. You know what I mean? So go check out the Facebook page. Go check out Brian Fox's stuff. Had a great chat. Hopefully you enjoy. I'll see you at the next one. Adios.